So my idea of a good time is spending time with book people. And if you feel the same way, I hope to see you on Thursday, April 27th through to Saturday, April 29th at the Epigraph Literary Festival. It's a free virtual event that's all about books, the joy of reading, and the literary lifestyle. We also have an amazing author lineup, some great speakers, and fun sessions. So visit epigraphlitfest.com to register for this fun virtual festival. That's epigraphlitfest.com to get your free tickets. Plus, early birds get first dibs on event swag. So go to epigraphlitfest.com to register, and I hope to see you there. Hello, I'm Victoria from BiblioLifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. In today's episode, I will be sharing 7 new books across genres to read this spring. So if you're looking to add some great books to your TBR, stay tuned. Hi there, could you do me a favor really quick? Would you pretty please subscribe to the show, leave me a 5-star rating if you like it, and share an episode or 2 with your bookish friends? Better yet, if you could drop a link to the show or to your favorite episode in your book club or bookish group chat, that works too. I promise it only takes a few seconds. It really helps the show. Plus, I'll be incredibly grateful for it. So thanks in advance, and now on to the episode. Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Reader's Couch podcast. Today, I will be sharing 7 new books from across genres to read this spring. So if you're looking to add some great books to your TBR, this episode is just for you. Now, the 7 books I'll be sharing with you today are from the 2023 BiblioLifestyle Spring Reading Guide. If you're hearing about the guide for the first time, it's a free downloadable PDF guide that I create sharing some of the best new books of the season, along with some fun things to do this season, spring-themed recipes, and reading or lifestyle tips. So if you haven't already, visit springreadingguide.com to download your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. That's springreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. One last time, springreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. I'll also include a link in the show notes so you can get your free copy of the guide there. In the guide, you'll find 21 new books organized across 7 categories, and I've selected one standout book from each category to share with you today. So if you're familiar with the guide, you know I have a minimalist list that has 6 books to read this season. So I'm adding a bonus pick here today. So in total, you'll get 7 books, 1 from each category. So without further ado, here are the 7 new books I highly recommend you read if you're only going to pick up a few books this spring. So the first book I'm recommending is In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. This is my literary fiction selection from the guide, and my elevator pitch is that this novel tells the love story of 2 young men who are classmates and how they grapple with the realities of war when they both enlist during World War I. Now, I would have to say this is definitely a character study with a historical backdrop meets suspense thriller kind of mashup, because there's so many secrets in this novel, so that's kind of where the suspense thriller element comes in, because so many things unfold in this novel. Now we meet 2 young men. They're boarding school students in England just before the Great War. We meet Sidney, who is Jewish, though he denies it, flat out denies that he's Jewish. We meet Henry, or Heinrich. Now Henry has lived lived in England for most of his life, but he's half German. Now, this is a very dangerous thing to be during this time. So as we're reading, we see that Sidney has so much feelings for Henry. He loves him, but he kind of feels like, Henry doesn't feel the same way. But the truth is, Henry does feel the same way about Sidney, but they don't know that. So anyways, because of the time of this novel, and to kind of just prove that, they're British, they decide to compensate for this by signing up to join the military. Especially because Henry, his uncle, has been accused to be a German traitor, so his family encourages him to enlist. Now, they go off to battle, and the only thing I will say is that one goes off and doesn't return, and then the other one is left to kind of assume the worst. I'm not really going to dive into it too much, but I will say what I enjoyed most about this book is how the author recreates boarding school life during that time. I think the realities of war were it felt very real, it was very palpable, and it wasn't just the action scenes, because this book has action scenes. There's even an escape scene, by the way, but it was just, you could feel the overall grittiness of the war. So, yeah. But also, ultimately, this is a novel of first love, the friendship between men, the camaraderie between men, because also it's not just Henry and Sidney who sign up, but quite a few of their classmates sign up as well. So it was just kind of really nice to see the camaraderie amongst them, but we also see the horrors of war as well. It was very compelling. It's a novel I won't soon forget. I would say, for comparisons, if you read and loved A Little Life by Hanya Yanihara, I think you'll enjoy this one. Another one would be Atonement by Ian McEwan. I think you would really enjoy In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. So, yeah, I think it's a great book, and I hope you'll give it a go. Okay, book 2 on my list is historical fiction, and it's Hang the Moon by Jeanette Walls. Now, this book tells the story of feuding families, prohibition, and a woman who rises to the top of her family's bootlegging empire in post-World War I Virginia. Now, I think I said this in a previous podcast episode. I think it's the one when I was talking about the spring reading guide. I don't read a lot of books about prohibition, and just the thought of prohibition is kind of just incredibly wild to me. Again, I don't know if it's kind of like, an outsider's perspective, but just the thought that prohibition existed in America for so long, yeah, it's wild to me. But anyways, back to the novel. In the book, we meet two bootlegging families. So there's the Kincaid family and the Bond brothers, right? And for over 50 years, these two families, there's been bad blood between them, and it all started with the Kincaids' acquisition of a huge parcel of land, 80-something acres of land from the Bonds. So they just kind of felt like, something rotten had gone on there, I won't say, but because of that, these two families have just had bad blood between them. Now, the patriarch of the family, he's known as the Duke, and most of Claiborne County, he runs kind of, both financially and politically. He has great control in the county. He has a general store. He has rental properties, warehousing, lumber mills, like all kinds of businesses, He just has a lot of influence in this county. But anyway, after the Duke passes away and other deaths occur in the family, I'm not going to say who died, Sally takes control of her family's business during the Prohibition years. And through her reign of this family's, business, it escalates the tensions and the bad blood that existed between the Bond family, who they now want to avenge, this kind of, this land grab, because that's how they view it, the 80-something acres that the Kincaid family acquired. So they are basically trying to avenge this, and we see both families just kind of get really entangled, and we just see lots of secrets come to light. Also in the book, we see, we meet a staunch prohibitionist going to war against the bootleggers. We see Sally wanting to support her sister, but she also sympathizes with the bootleggers because she recognizes that everyone within the community, everyone relies on bootlegging for income, including their family's finances. So, there's a lot going on there. Plus, again, the escalation with the Bond family over the land. Now, things I loved with this book is that Sally made for a great heroine. We see her struggling with what's morally right. We see her struggling with her family. We see her fighting just in general against the limitations of being a woman at that time. This is a book of succession. It's succession within the family because Sally didn't initially inherit it. Her brother was a person who inherited the family business because he was the only boy. We also saw a family that just had this great control over what is a poor rural county in Virginia, and just quite honestly, any family just having such great influence and control within a specific county, it's problematic within itself. It kind of had me thinking about that Alex Murdaugh family in South Carolina a bit. I did say Succession already, and it has a plot at the core of this novel. So it's not just historical fiction. There is, a plot driving this story, and the revelation at the end was just, okay, wow. So yeah, I highly recommend that you give Hang the Moon by Jeanette Walls a try. When I think of books that are kind of, similar, I think of The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes and The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. So if you loved either of those books, I highly recommend you give this one a go. The third book on my list, and this is a book with themes of family and friendship. The book I'm recommending you read is What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez by Claire Jimenez. My elevator pitch for this one is a Staten Island family deals with the disappearance of 13-year-old Ruthie and what happens when they discover she's potentially alive and on a reality TV show. Now, this book is set in a Pentecostal Puerto Rican community in Staten Island, and we learn that in 1996, 8th grader Ruthie mysteriously disappears after track practice, never to be seen again. Now, the years since Ruthie's disappearance have been incredibly challenging for the Ramirez family. Fast forward, however, to 2008, 12 years after Ruthie's disappearance, and we see the matriarch, Dolores, who is guilt-ridden. She has a lot of fear, she has a lot of resentment, and she has a lot of anger. We meet Ruthie's younger sister, Nina, who's a recent college graduate, who returns to Staten Island for a retail job because she has limited job options. We also meet Jessica, the eldest sibling, who is a nurse's aide, and she has the burden of her job, plus taking care of her daughter, and also caring for their mother. Now, both sisters, Nina and Jessica, has secrets, but especially Jessica. And that's all I'll say. You'll have to read the book to kind of, really get into it. But one day, Jessica's watching television and she sees a woman she believes to be Ruthie on a reality show called Catfight, where 5 women live in a Boston condo and they fight each other to stay in the condo where they're filming and to win a grand prize. So, Jessica and Nina, they binge the show and they make a plan to drive to Boston to rescue their sister. And when their mom finds out about the trip, she gets her church friend Irene to come along as well. And when all 4 of them get to Boston, oh my gosh, things start to happen. That's all I'll say. What I really loved about this book is, in general, I love reading books about the familial bonds between women. It's also a very 90s, early aughts kind of book, which is, my time. And I loved all the pop culture references. I actually think this book just has great storytelling. I couldn't stop turning the pages. It also does a great job of balancing what would be more serious and heavier topics and, thought-provoking scenes with just humor and light. Overall, I just say it's a compelling and page-turning story of family amid loss that is both heartbreaking but also funny at the same time. When I think of comparisons, I thought of Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, which, by the way, I have an interview with Charmaine Wilkerson on the pod, so it's one of those episodes, I don't remember which one, but it's on the feed. I also thought about Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. I feel these two books are very similar. So if you read either Black Cake or Olga Dies Dreaming, I really think you'll enjoy What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez by Claire Jimenez. Number 4 on my list is a mystery and thriller selection, and the book I'm recommending you read is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Now, my elevator pitch for this book is when a school teacher and avid reader gives a book a 1-star review and refuses to take it down, it pushes the unhinged psychopath author off the edge. Now, I think that pitch kind of says it all, but let's get into it. So in the book, we meet a school teacher named Emma, and she's house-sitting an old beachfront home on the Washington coast, where she's avoiding thinking about her problems, she's avoiding thinking about what happened a few months before. She walks her dog, a golden retriever named Laika, and she binge reads the never-ending supply of 99-cent self-published books. So one day, she reads a book called Murder Mountain. Now, Emma hates everything about this book. She thinks it's poorly written and the story is just so cliche. So she gives the book a 1-star review. But after posting her review, she gets a reply from the author saying she needs to take her review down. Emma refuses, and then the author's messages just get really terrifying and menacing. And then, ding dong, trouble comes knocking to her front door. Now, this is a thriller, so there's not much I can say, but what I will say is that this book has classic stalker tropes, but it felt, new and fresh. So it's like, a new take on those classic tropes that we love. The tension was good in this novel. There were twisty plots. There's that nail-biting suspense you want. And just overall, I really think this was a good thriller, and I really enjoyed it very much. And I just, I love the premise of a reader posting a 1-star review. The author kind of getting into the business and telling her to take it down. She refuses, and then, of course, this psychopath goes off the edge. Who, by the way, the author is convinced that they are going to make Emma's death the center of their next novel. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I'm done. Comparisons. If you read Survive the Night by Riley Sager, I think you'll enjoy this one. I really enjoyed the book, and I hope you'll give it a go. The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Number 5 on my list is a non-fiction selection, and this one is entitled The Forgotten Girls by Monica Potts. Now, this book also has a subtitle, so it reads The Forgotten Girls, a memoir of friendship and lost promise in rural America. Now, my elevator pitch for this book is an examination of the lives of 2 childhood friends, the forces that allowed one to escape, and how poverty, trauma, and substance abuse sent the other one spiraling. Now, the book tells the story of the author Monica and her best friend Darcy. They were both determined to make something of themselves. They were both bright girls. How did their lives turn out so different? That's the ultimate question at the core of this book. Now, notably, Monica Potts is a journalist and a senior politics reporter who returned to her hometown in northern Arkansas because she was driven to understand why poor, uneducated white women were dying at higher rates than ever before. Now, what might seem on the surface like a purely professional interest, there was also something very personal about it too, and that's kind of where her friend Darcy comes in. Now, in the book, we learn that before Monica was a student at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, she spent her early years, her entire childhood, this woman was born and raised in the very area amongst the very women that she now went there to study. But we also see the focus is not just on the general study of her returning to study the women in this area, but the focus is also on a childhood best friend who, again, was a smart girl with great potential. Both these girls spent their childhood, making plans of what they want to do with their lives, how they're going to escape this place. But in the end, Monica left and she fulfilled her dreams, but Darcy, along with many others in their circles, they did not. Now, I know this is a very surface level description because, I actually want you to read the book. And when you read it, though, you will kind of see the differences in Darcy's and Monica's parents. There's differences in their personal situations. But we also see that by a stroke of just, luck, chance, opportunity that happened for Monica, that kind of helped to open doors for her, and how unfortunately Darcy's descent into drugs and alcohol sent her down a road of homelessness, poverty, mental illness, and really violent relationships. Now, what I loved about this book is that the author didn't just say, well, look, these are the choices I made, these are the choices Darcy made, and this is why we went down different paths. I actually love the fact that she went on to explain why choices for women are limited, especially women who live in these rural areas. This book also, through its narrative, provides both a sociological and cultural context as to why these things happen in these communities. And most importantly, and I think this is something that, unless you've lived it, you maybe don't know it, or unless you've read about it, you really don't think about it. But it's just the hopelessness that destroys these communities. It's like a silent, invisible hopelessness. And it's not just unique to this community that the author is writing about, but it's something that can be found in common across communities across America. So for me, this book was just incredibly eye-opening, but also thought-provoking. And when I was thinking of comps for this book, like a book that this book is similar to, I didn't have to think twice, because the book I'm going to tell you is also a must read. This book is entitled Invisible Child by Andrea Elliott. Now, while this book focuses on a black girl in New York and her going through homelessness as well, living in a shelter, having big dreams, and just all the limitations a girl had to face, I think we can find similarities here. And I actually, if I could, I would bundle both these books and gift it to readers, because it's almost kind of like two different sides of the coin. So as someone who read An Invisible Child and then reading as well Monica Potts' book, The Forgotten Girls, you see differences, obviously, but you see so much similarities there. So again, I highly recommend The Forgotten Girls by Monica Potts, but I also want to throw in there, if you haven't already, Invisible Child by Andrea Elliott. Okay, book 6 on my list is a feel-good book. We're getting into romance now. And the book I'm recommending you read is Happy Place by Emily Henry. Now, my elevator pitch for this one is: exes pretend they're still together for their annual vacation with friends, but soon they fall back into a familiar dynamic and old flames reignite. Now, in this novel, we meet Win and Harriet. They were the perfect couple until Win dumped Harriet. Now, Harriet is still kind of, not so sure, not so clear on why Win dumped her. Anyway, Harriet is burnt out at her job and is looking forward to just a relaxing week-long getaway with their friend group. And this friend group is incredibly tight-knit, and they're going to this remote Maine beach cottage that they've frequented for years. Now, when Harriet gets there, she discovers that Win will also be there for the week-long vacation. But what's even worse is that Win and Harriet broke up and they've yet to tell their friends. But because Harriet doesn't want to ruin this week-long vacation, because the cottage that they frequented for years, it's up for sale, and this is essentially the group's last hurrah there. So in order not to ruin things for their friends, Harriet and Win pretend to be happily in love. Now, obviously they're not, they're broken up, but because it's a romance, soon they fall into a familiar dynamic and old flames start to reignite. Now, what I loved about this book is I love the chemistry between Win and Harriet. It was quite delicious to read. I also loved reading about the complicated relationships within their own respective families, because that kind of felt super relatable, you know? I also love the friend group. I think that was my favorite part, because I love a good friend group. And I also love seeing the friends navigate their friendship as their lives are taking them in, different directions, which is also relatable. But overall, I love the banter in this novel, the banter between characters. It was just, it was really funny and light. And again, I just love the group of friends, but I also just love the banter between them all. Now, when I was thinking of comps, I was again just thinking of other Emily Henry books, because they kind of have a similar vibe. I think again the main difference with this one is the group of friends. That was different, but it was also what I loved. But outside of the author's own books, the one author that came immediately to mind was Carly Fortune. Now, last year, Carly Fortune had a book every summer after. That was kind of similar in a way to me. But my favorite from Carly Fortune is her new book, Meet Me at the Lake. I think that one is incredibly similar. So if you're looking for another book to add to your reading list, I highly recommend that one. So I think if you just read Carly Fortune before, or you've just read Emily Henry and you've read all her books, then of course, Happy Place is a book to add to your list. Okay, book 7 on my list is actually my bonus pick, which is my add-on selection to the Minimalist list, because the Minimalist list in the spring reading guide has 6 must-read books. However, the guide has 7 categories. So my add-on is a science fiction and fantasy selection. And the book I'm recommending that you read is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakravarti. Now, this is a thrilling historical fantasy, and my elevator pitch is this is a book set in medieval Oman where a mother, who was one of the Indian Ocean's most notorious pirates, returns to the sea to secure her daughter's future. Now again, this book is set in medieval Oman, and we meet Amina Al-Sarafi, who has earned the reputation as one of the Indian Ocean's most notorious pirates. Now, after an incident occurs, which I won't say, and when she gives birth to her half-human daughter, Amina leaves her bandit seafaring life behind. That is until the mother of one of her former crewmates guilt trips her and offers her $1 million deal to retrieve her kidnapped granddaughter. So Amina thinks, not a bad idea. Plus, she's kind of been itching to go back to her old career. So Amina recruits her old crew to help her, but soon she discovers that the kidnappers, they have different motives to what she was led to believe. And she also discovers that the powers they possess is too much for them to overcome. But unfortunately, Amina can't back out because her daughter's life is at risk. So again, I know this is very surface level, but this book really gets into it. The world building was amazing, and there are just so many things I loved about this book. One of the main things that I loved about this book is that the hero, or rather the heroine, is a middle-aged mother. I love that because, I tend to see that the heroes or the heroines at the center of books tend to be younger, especially in these fantasy novels. So I really appreciated a middle-aged mother. Plus, besides, she has lots of life experience, which in my opinion is a huge advantage. I also love seeing her balance between, her personal and her professional life, the things she wants to be there for her daughter, her family, her community, but she also misses her job, And I also think that anyone, whether you're a woman or not, once you're a caregiver and, you have a profession that you love, you might find strife between the two, because it's like you could take on more at work, maybe try to get a promotion, but you're thinking about coming home or being there for your loved one. So I love seeing that as well. I also love the themes of just being a mother in general, being a woman in the community, and having to deal with society's expectations. So those are just some of the themes that I really enjoyed. But again, the world building, amazing. But the banter in this novel is so good. I really enjoyed it. They're fun plot twists, they're thrilling action sequences. And I genuinely fell in love with the cast. I really love them, you know. They're funny and charming, but also don't forget, these folks are crooked. They're pirates. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Just if you're a fan of any historical fantasy, I think you'll enjoy this one. I know this author is known for I can never pronounce it, but she's known for the Daevabad trilogy. I personally think this is better. I don't know, just my unpopular opinion. So I'm really excited to see where this series will go, and this is the first book. So I highly recommend you pick up a copy of The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. So readers, I really hope you discovered some new books today and that you feel inspired to pick up a book or two from my list of 7 books to read this spring. If you haven't already, visit springreadingguide.com to download your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. That's springreadingguide.com for your free copy of the 2023 Spring Reading Guide. I will also include a link in the show notes so you can get your free copy of the guide. So that's it for now. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.